Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 24b, with the word, top of the page, one line in, with the words Amar Rav Yossi. Be'eze midras negazeh, ela she'im naga bo azav tame maga azav. The Mishnah continues. Rabbi Yossi said, what source of impurity imparted by treading did this curtain touch? Rather, the halacha is that if a zav touched the sheet itself before it was made into a curtain, and it did not only lie on it without touching it directly, then although the curtain is pure with regard to ritual impurity imparted by treading, it is nevertheless impure due to contact with a zav. This is because the impurity transmitted by contact with a zav applies in the case of a curtain, which is not the halacha with regard to impurity imparted by treading. Ki naga bo hazav mihatame efilu lebasav kitame midras yachar kach maga zav amai lema savela tuma. Abaye comments, when a zav touched the sheet, in any event, it was rendered impure even if he touched it after he lay on the sheet, thereby rendering it impure with impurity imparted by treading. In this manner, it was rendered impure with the initial impurity imparted by treading, and afterward it was again rendered impure due to contact with a zav. According to the statement of Rava, why would this be the halacha? Let us say that the item is already saturated with impurity and cannot be rendered impure a second time. Amrle umimai dehai she'im naga bo hazav lebasa midras dilma mikame midras dehabia tuma chamura al tuma kala. Rava said to him in response, and from where do you know that the statement of Rabbi Yossi that if a zav touched the sheet it is nevertheless impure due to contact with a zav is referring to a case where a zav touched the sheet after it was rendered impure with the ritual impurity imparted by treading? Perhaps he was referring to a case where a zav touched the sheet, rendering it impure due to contact with a zav before he lay on it, and rendered it impure with the ritual impurity imparted by treading. In that case, the severe form of ritual impurity imparted by the treading of the zav, which is a primary source of ritual impurity that imparts impurity to all people and items, takes effect in addition to the lesser form of impurity imparted by contact with a zav, which imparts impurity only to food and drink. But here, in the case of part of a meal offering that was touched by one who immersed that day, after having already become impure due to the touch of one who immersed that day, where both this and that are lesser forms of impurity, perhaps the impurity does not take effect a second time, as it is already impure. Ela mi seifa mode Rabbi Yossi b'shnei sedinin hamekupalin ומנוחן זה לזה ישתם זב עליהן שהעליון תמי מדרס והתחתון תמי מדרס ומגע מדרס וימי למסווה לטומאה. The Gemara suggests, rather, the proof against the existence of a principle that an item can be saturated with impurity and not susceptible to becoming impure a second time is from the last clause of a Braita that corresponds to the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi concedes that in the case of two sheets that are folded and placed on top of one another, and the zav sat upon them, the top sheet is rendered impure with the ritual impurity imparted by treading, and the bottom sheet is rendered impure with the ritual impurity imparted by treading and due to contact with the top sheet that has become ritually impure with impurity imparted by treading. The Gemara explains, but according to the opinion advanced in Rava's dilemma, why would this be the case? Let us say that the bottom sheet is already saturated with impurity and cannot be rendered impure a second time. The Gemara rejects this proof there. With regard to the bottom sheet, the two types of impurity take effect simultaneously. Whereas here, with regard to the impure meal offering, the two forms of impurity take effect one after the other. It is only in the latter case that Rava suggests that the second type of impurity does not take effect. Therefore, there is no conclusive proof. And the question raised by Rava remains unresolved. Although it doesn't say teku. Okay. Amarave soin shechilko yad echad mehem nifiri shacham tachta v'nimtza rishon v'harei shloshton munachim v'viso v'nitma avud avud v'rishim zdav michosh den zavud. Rava says, in the case where one divided a tenth of an ephah of meal offering to two halves, and one half was lost, and he separated another half in its stead, and afterward the first lost half was found, and all three are placed in their receptacle together. If the one that had been lost became impure, the previously lost half-tenth of an ephah and the first half-tenth of an ephah join together and become impure in accordance with the Mishnah cited earlier in Chagiga 20b. That a vessel joins the two together with regard to ritual impurity, but the half-tenth of an ephah that was separated to replace the lost half-tenth does not join together with the other half-tenths, and it remains pure. Nitma mufrash rishon misalfin misalfin disparishon shnei misalfin. If the one that had been separated to replace the lost half-tenth became impure, then the separated half-tenth and the first half-tenth joined together to become impure, since the former was separated in order to complete the tenth together with the first tenth, while the previously lost half-tenth does not join together with them. If the first half-tenth became impure, then both the previously lost half-tenth as well as the half-tenth that was separated as its replacement join together and become ritually impure, as each of them had at one point been part of the same tenth as the first half-tenth. Abaya Amar Filu Nitzvah Echad Me'ana Mishne Mitzvahfin My Time Akulu B'nei Bikita Elaninu. Abaya says, even if any one of the half-tenths became impure, both remaining half-tenths join together and become impure as well. What is the reason? They are all residents of one cabin. Meaning, in other words, they were meant to be part of the same meal offering. Okay, linyan kamitzo. V'chei linyan kamitzo kamatz bin ha'avud she'arish necholin mufrash ena nechol kamatz bin ha'mufrash she'arish necholin avud ena nechol. And similarly, according to Rava, with regard to the removal of the handful, if one removed the handful from the previously lost half-tenth, its remainder and the remainder of the first half-tenth of an ephah are eaten by the priests, while the half-tenth of an ephah that was separated in its stead is not eaten. Since it was not meant to join together with its other half-tenth, the removal of the handful does not permit its consumption. If one removed the handful from the one that had been separated in place of the lost half-tenth, then its remainder and the first half-tenth of an ephah are eaten, while the previously lost half-tenth is not eaten. If one removed the handful from the first half-tenth, then both the previously lost half-tenth as well as the half-tenth that had been separated in its stead are not eaten. This is because the removal of the handful allows the remainder of only 1/10 to be eaten, and it is not known whether the consumption of the previously lost half-tenth or the replacement half-tenth has now been permitted. Abaya Omar, afilu komatz me'echad mehen, shnein eino necholin, ma'itaima kulehu, nami b'nei bikta te'adalinu. Abaya says, even if one removed the handful from any one of them, both remaining half-tenths are not eaten. What is the reason? They are all residents of one cabin, and it is not possible to know whether the consumption of one or of the other has been permitted. Rav Papa objects to this ruling of Abaya. And is that to say that in any event the remainder of the half-tenth itself from which the handful was taken is eaten, but 1/6, the danka, 1/6 of the handful was removed. That was removed was not sacrificed to permit this remainder. The handful was removed to permit the consumption of the remainders of all the 3 half-tenths and of an ephah in the receptacle, since the handful included 1/3 that was removed to account for the half-tenth that is not needed. It turns out that each of the 2 actual half-tenths should have had an additional 1/6 removed to render them permitted. Rav Yitzchak, the son of Rav Mesharsha, also objects to this ruling of Abaya, and with regard to the handful itself, how can it be sacrificed? But 1/3 of it, meaning the portion separated to permit the extraneous half-tenth of the neva, is non-sacred. Rav Ashi Amar Kometz B'da'ata Te Kohen Talia Mimta V'Kohen Kikamitz Isaron Kamitz. Rav Ashi said these questions present no difficulty, since with regards to the removal of the handful, the matter is dependent on the intention of the priest. And when the priest removes the handful, he removes it to permit the remainder of the 10th of an ephah, and not the remainder of the extraneous half-tenth. Still, the other 2 halves may not be eaten because it is not possible to know whether the consumption of one or the other has been permitted.